Released in the UK on February 9th, 2007, Goal 2 Living the Dream follows on from the events of the first film. If you haven't seen that review, feel free to click here and watch it. With our main man Santiago Munez securing a move from Newcastle United to Real Madrid. This dream move soon turns into a nightmare in typical cinematic style as Santiago is forced to overcome a number of obstacles as he tries to help his new team to European glory. Kuno Becker returns in his role as Santiago, along with a few other familiar faces. Anna Friel returns as his girlfriend Roz, Stephen Delane reprises his role as Santi's agent Glenn, and Alessandro Nivola is back as Gavin Harris, Santi's Newcastle United teammate. Along with the returning cast, there are several new notable additions such as Elizabeth Pena playing the role of Rosa, and Rutger Goddamn Hauer as Rudy, the Real Madrid head coach. Directorial duties have passed from Danny Cannon to Jaume Collet Serra. There's a very good chance I've horribly butchered the man's name and I can only apologise. Whose CV includes the likes of House of Wax and Orphan, both of which are horror films, so it would make sense that he would take on this absolute horror show of a project. Collet Serra is a big football fan, so taking on the project was a no-brainer for him. When asked how the tone would differ from the first film, he said that the second of any film trilogy is usually the darkest. With its directorial history and a promise of a darker tone, I'm expecting to see Santi and Gav go on a mad killing spree with cameos from Guti and Roberto Carlos as two lads who get done in working the night shift down the local Asda. Does that happen? Let's find out. Spoilers, it doesn't. We begin in the Santiago Bernabeu as Real Madrid are on the receiving end of a sound thrashing from El Clasico rivals Barcelona, with the blame being placed firmly on the shoulders of Gavin, who has secured a move to Real since the first film. Keep in mind this is a team that has Cicinho and an overweight Antonio Cassano in it, so I think that's a tad harsh on per Gav. Back in Newcastle, it's the complete opposite for Santiago, who has established himself as the main man on Tyneside, apparently banging in goal after goal. There's never any reference made to how long has passed between the first film and this one, but based on the footage used, it seems to take place during the 2004-05 season, whereas this film seems to take place the very next season, 2005-06. So either all of Santi's goals are taking place in pre-season, or the league season has already started. As is shown later on, Santi's move takes place on deadline day of the summer window, so that just adds even more confusion. But maybe I'm just an idiot and I'm missing something incredibly obvious here, so I'll just move on. Santi and Roz are now living together and making plans for their wedding. Bloody hell, that was a bit quick, no? Either way, everything seems to be going rather well for the both of them, even with Santi drinking directly out of the carton, the filthy git. That would be an immediate red flag for me, I'm just saying. While at a restaurant with friends, Glenn informs Santi that he has been on the phone with representatives from Real Madrid, who are interested in a meeting, so they fly to Japan, where the team are playing a pre-season tournament. The two meet with manager Rudy van der Merwe, played by the legendary Rutger Hauer, and are informed that the deal needs to be done quickly as it's the last day of the window. To be fair, if Roy Batty is telling me to do something as quickly as possible, you best believe I'm going to do it. Although I once again have several questions. The last day of the summer window would have been at the end of August, meaning that the La Liga season would have already begun. So what the arse are Real Madrid doing in Japan? Being the pedant that I am, I looked up their fixture list for that season, and at the time they would have just opened their league campaign with a 2-1 win away at Cadiz. You can't say we aren't thorough here on this channel. In the end, the deal does get done, and Santi moves to Real with Michael Owen heading into Newcastle in exchange. It's genuinely impossible to decide who got the worst end of that deal. Who am I kidding, it's Newcastle, it's always Newcastle. This causes a slight dilemma for Roz, who wants to stay in Newcastle to continue her nursing, so she will visit every few weeks or so as a compromise. Santi is unveiled at the Bernabeu and his arrival is the talk of the town, so much so that his first press conference is being televised. The broadcast is being shown in a local bar, where one of the bar staff, Rosa, is transfixed on the screen. Santi attends his first training session as a Real Madrid player, but his part of the montage is rather limited, focusing more on cameos from a bunch of the Real Madrid lads. I mentioned in the review of the first film that Kuno Becker didn't really play football before taking the role, and it does still show at times. He's still very awkward when it comes to striking the ball, but fair play to him for giving it a go. Real kick off their Champions League campaign with Gavin's per form being the main focal point. Gav misses several big chances and so is brought off for Santi to make his debut. He makes an instant impact and scores an absolute banger to give Real Madrid the win in the dying minutes. It seems that Santi is the original Ruben Neves, no tap-ins for this lad. The game is being shown in the bar where Rosa is working and she sees Santi score. She catches her son Enrique up to no good and tries to convince him to straighten up, using Santi as an example. This is where it's revealed that Enrique is Santi's half-brother, meaning that Rosa is Santiago's mother. This really comes out of nowhere considering how pivotal this revelation seems to be, especially considering how big of a plot point it was in the first film, with Santi's family being resentful of her since she had seemingly walked out on them all. Speaking of character development, Gavin tells the group that he's now prepping for his retirement, and that he just wants a quiet life and has a few future investments in mind. I really like how Gavin has naturally gone from being a smarmy prick to someone who's level-headed and ultimately very likeable. It seems like a very organic character change, so kudos to Alessandro Nivola for pulling that off. Roz and Santi attend a birthday party for Gavin where they meet a menagerie of unlikable buffoons. With the amount of people at this party, it's really beginning to flare up my social anxiety, so I'll move on pretty quickly. We are introduced to Jordana, a love interest of Gavin. However, she seems more interested in our boy Santi. At least I think that's the case, as no woman has ever done that to me, so I have no point of reference. God, I'm so lonely! After seeing how nice Gav's gaff is, Santi decides to buy one of his own in Madrid. Quite rightly, this has come to a bit of a surprise to Roz, who wasn't informed of the decision. We're slowly starting to see Santi's demeanour and attitude start to change. Side note, as someone in the process of currently trying to buy a house, the ease and speed of which he has got all this done annoys me greatly. Once again, Santi is on the bench for another Champions League tie, and Gavin gets the start despite his poor run of form. Either Gavin's league form is legitimately world class, or Rudy just has that low of an opinion of Santi that you can't start ahead of a lad who hasn't scored since dinosaurs roamed the earth. Either way, the trend continues and Santiago comes on once again to score, this time a trademark solo effort which we've seen maybe one of across 2 films. Honestly, this lad has difficulty kicking a ball but can Cruyff turn like no one's business. After the game, Rudy chews out Gavin despite continuously starting him, and Santi asks when he's going to get a start. Hang on, I've just realised something. Ronaldo's in this squad. Arguably the greatest striker of all time is being kept out of the team by a misfiring journeyman and a lad who was cutting grass a year ago. Methinks Rudy needs to have a word with himself. Upon leaving the training ground, Santi is ambushed by Enrique, who shows him a picture of Rosa and tells him that they are related. Santi is unable to comprehend this news and quickly drives away, still with the photo in his car. We get more of a glimpse into how Santi's demeanour is changing as he yells at Glenn for making him do a commercial shoot that he feels is beneath him. In fairness, Tofu is minging, so I can see where he's coming from. He tells Roz about the incident with Enrique and he contacts his grandmother for confirmation. It turns out that she knew all along and didn't tell him. With his head still all over the place, Santi finally gets his first start in a league game against Valencia, with Gavin taking his place on the bench. With his fragile state of mind, Santi doesn't perform well at all, culminating in a straight red card. To be fair, it's not the worst start that someone's had in a Real Madrid jersey. The roles are reversed as Gav comes off the bench to break his goal drought. Santi goes to drown his sorrows when he bumps into Jordana because of coincidence. The two drink together and then, as they are leaving, share a goodbye peck on the cheek. This gets snapped by paparazzi, so remember that, it's really important. Also, as a side note, drinking and driving, that's bloody shameful that, that's 3 points in a 6-hour course there, mate. The next morning, Santi sleeps in and misses the team's flight to Norway, blaming Roz. He has to get his own flight out to Norway, only to sit on the bench for the entire game. His frustration boils over, and he ends up parting ways with Glenn, who tells Santi that despite having enjoyed their time together, he needs to reassess his recent actions. Gavin has hit some hard times and moves in with Santi, in a role reversal of the first film. During a kickabout in the car park, Santi injures his leg and is told to stay in Spain, meaning that he won't be able to fly back to see Roz for Christmas. She is rightly miffed at this and points out all the sacrifices she has made for him. The way that Anna Friel plays this character is arguably the most accomplished of anyone over the 2 films. She's extremely genuine and gives a very real performance of someone who does love Santiago, but feels that her feelings aren't as important to him as his are to her, and is rightfully upset about it. If I worded that badly, it sounds like I worded that badly. Fast forward to New Year's Eve, and with no one to help guide him and unable to cope with what's going on around him, Santi is lured into getting together with Jordana. I know he's having a rough time of it, but this seems wholly out of character for him. I know what they're trying to do, but I just don't believe that the character of Santiago would ever do something like this. The family drama continues as Santi finds Enrique on the side of the road, and the two converse about Rosa at a much higher level than my A-level Spanish is capable of comprehending. Can I just say, Enrique is only in this film for about 20 minutes, and he is genuinely the most unlikable character out of either film. Exemplified by him stealing Santi's bag of gear and running off with it as he feels entitled to it because of who his half-brother is. Even worse, he then steals his bloody motor. Although how the RC actually found it in the first place is beyond me. There's no explanation of how Enrique knew where Santi would be, or how he got the keys. He does eventually end up crashing, but unfortunately for my personal viewing experience, survives and is taken to the hospital by Santi, who is incredibly rather chill about having his car nicked and subsequently wrecked. Some pap snaps a photo of Santi in the police station and is rightfully chinned for his general dickery. As he's being taken away, Santi sees his mother for the first time, which is, to be fair, quite a powerful image. He phones Glenn for guidance, but is told that despite the fact that Glenn still considers Santi a friend, he's on his own and will have to figure things out for himself. Things go from bad to worse for our boy Santiago, as pictures of him and Jordana are plastered across all the gossip magazines, which Roz sees. She's rightfully upset, and Anna Friel's performance here is genuinely heart-wrenching, as she has done nothing but good throughout both films, and you really do feel for her. This seems to be the end of their relationship, but is never specifically referenced again. On the pitch, Santi's fortunes are on the up at least, as both he and Gav score in the Champions League semi-finals to take Real Madrid into the final. Desperate to make sense of his past, Santi goes in search of Rosa. After asking around, he finds out where she is, and the two finally meet after a long number of years. We finally get an explanation as to why she left, which is, to be honest, rather grim. She was assaulted by Santi's uncle and was left in a state of panic, so she left. She did go back a few weeks later, but the family had gone, presumably having gone to the border as was shown at the beginning of the first film. I know the director said that this film would have a darker tone than the first, but bloody hell, mate. To lighten the mood a tad, we cut to Gav in the bath. He reveals to Santi that he's worried about getting older and is unsure of what's going to happen once his contract expires, so Santi goes to Rudy and asks him to start Gavin ahead of him in the Champions League final. This is the start of Santi's own personal redemption, as he then goes on to call Roz and bare his soul to her, telling her how much he misses her and that he wants to prove to her that he can be better. It is revealed here that Roz is pregnant, which, to be honest, felt a little bit like they were trying a bit too hard to pull on the heartstrings. The situation between the two as it is enough to get that desired response from the audience, so throwing in this wrinkle is a bit much. So at long last we come to the climax of the film. By the way, this movie is 2 hours long and it really doesn't need to be. It's Real Madrid versus Arsenal in the Champions League final. These two actually met in the semi-finals of that year's tournament, and the footage used here is from the first leg. Gav does get the start, but he almost immediately gives away a penalty which Arsenal convert to take a 1-0 lead. Real are getting battered and are grateful for the half-time whistle. After an invigorating pep talk from Rudy, Gav is sent out for the second half along with Santi, the two linking up for the first time since their Newcastle days. Again, may I remind you, this is supposedly a Champions League final and Ronaldo is nowhere to be seen. My grievances appear to be founded as Arsenal go 2-0 up through Thierry Henry. Christ, what Arsenal fans nowadays would give to be 2-0 up in any game, let alone a Champions League final. A second penalty is awarded to Arsenal, but this time Casillas makes the save and sends Real on a counter-attack. Rudy has been reading from the Sam Allardyce book of tactics as Santi smashes a ball route one up towards Gav, who beats Jens Lehmann to bring Real Madrid back into the game. Absolute techers on Gavin to control that and finish, by the way. We're after the 90-minute mark and into stoppage time at the end of the second half. A high Roberto Carlos ball into the area is met by Santi on the volley. Honestly, how the hell has he controlled that so well? And is banged into the back of the net to bring Real level with just seconds left to play. If you're playing along at home on your sports film cliche bingo card, then you just marked off the last spot on your card, and you win a commemorative keychain. Well done, you. Of course, the drama doesn't finish there, as actual worldwide star David Beckham steps up and scores the winner with a trademark free kick. The crowd goes mild as the lads all celebrate together as the final whistle blows. Now that the game is over, we can finally wrap up all these loose story threads and... what? To be continued. You have to be fuck. So there we go, Goal 2, Living the Dream. Now in regards to sequels, it was never going to be up there with the greats such as Godfather Part 2, Aliens or Shrek 2, don't even try to argue. But it failed to live up to the admittedly rather low expectations of audiences. Don't get me wrong, the first film, whilst not being a cinematic masterpiece by any stretch of the imagination, at least had charm and was a lot more grounded. Well, as grounded as a story like this can be. It felt like a labour of love which came through in the final product, whereas this felt like an obligation which just needed to get done. I'll be honest, it took me 3 sittings to get through it, mainly due to its 2-hour running time. Yes, the first film had a similar length, but there were so many things that could have been cut which would have made for a much more streamlined and altogether better experience. That's not to say there aren't positives about the film. Visual effects were as good, if not better than the first, in regards to imposing Santi and Gavin into the action on the pitch. Yes, it's a bit ropey by today's standards, but for the time, dare I say it was revolutionary, at least in regards to its ambition, which has to be commended. The performances for the most part are fine, with Anna Friel and Alessandra Nivola being the standouts. The likeability that Kuno Brecker brought to the first film just isn't there here. I know that's sort of the point, but it just comes across as rather forced and unnatural. I said that the first film fell squarely into mid-table, but this one I fear is hovering near the relegation zone, and no amount of feeder songs in the credits is going to change my mind. Thank you all so much for watching our review of the second Goal film. If you did enjoy it, do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment down below letting us know what you thought of the film. Please feel free to check out the rest of our content. We have documentaries, podcasts, and a whole heap of Pro Evo content. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you, as always, in the next one.